more than anybody else in the world.
Jonathan wants to come back in.
Well, I think that we could have a very long debate, possibly 3 times the length of what we've got left of this show, about the rights and wrongs of Israel's activities in Gaza and its defensive activities against terrorist organisations that surround it.
How has this new anti-Semitism, this new strain of virulent anti-Semitism manifested itself, then?
It manifests itself in a number of ways. So, when people living in Britain are experiencing anti-Semitic attacks and abuse, whether it's verbal or physical on buildings, there is no defence for that. Whatever Tony says, and whatever the gentleman over here says, there is no defence to say that the Board of Deputies of British Jews brings upon British Jews anti-Semitic attacks. It does nothing of the sort, and the rally that the Board of Deputies organised at the beginning of this year, during Operation Cast Lead in Israel and between Israel and Gaza, was in fact a peace rally calling for peace and an end to terrorism, and that is exactly what Israel wants, Jonathan, and it has no bearing on how people should treat British Jews in this country.
Is it anti-Semitic to say Israel has no right of existence?
Yes, totally. Why should Israel be criticised of having a right of existence, unlike any other number of countries around the world whose peoples have a right of existence?
So that is clearly,
the EU definition does acknowledge
that.
Yeah. Almost every accepted definition of anti-Semitism will tell you that.
Sorry, the difference is very simple, if you can not interrupt me for once. Israel calls itself a Jewish state. It doesn't call itself a state of its own citizens. There's no Israeli nationality. That is why 20% of Israelis... That is why... No, it doesn't. It says Jewish nationality. I'm sorry you can't read your own passport. But 20% of Israeli... 20% of the Israeli population do not serve in the Israeli army, just the Druze section of it.
OK, let's see what people think. Go on. Yeah.
There is a danger that this will develop...
Wait, we're over here now.
There's a danger this will develop simply into an argument about whether Israel is right or wrong. And there are people on either side. Most of the Jewish population in this country actually take a very centre view. We feel as a democratic country, both here and in Israel, we, even as Jews, can criticise Israel if we think they're wrong. And if we think they're wrong, they will say so. But the real problem of anti-Semitism, if you take the city in which you are now broadcasting from, in Birmingham, our cemetery, which has been there for a long, long time, had 60 gravestones desecrated, of which our family was one of them. All of the slogans written there were not about Israel, were not about Islam, they were about the National Front, and that's what we said. So there's a danger. Anti-Semitism has been here as long as life has existed and will be there forever. We as a community have begun to understand and live with it and to deal with it, I hope, in a sensible way.
You've been accused of it, haven't you? You've been accused of being anti-Semitic.
Yes, there are 2 things going on here.
What happened when you were accused of being anti-Semitic?
I actually criticised, basically, the Israeli behaviour in the Lebanon publicly, and I was accused of being anti-Semitic.
By whom?
By the Jewish parts of the Jewish community in Manchester. And that was very difficult, and there were some personal attacks on me and accusations of anti-Semitism. That was fundamentally unfair, because those who know me will know that I will fight against that sort of racism, which anti-Semitism reflects, as passionately as anybody here. And what we are actually facing in our society is the rise of the right, and when we have a communities under threat, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism is rising, and rising seriously. And we need to deal with that separately from the issue of Zionism and Israeli behaviour. They're 2 separate issues.
In a second. You lived in New York, Jenny, didn't you? Coming back here, do you think there's a difference?
Oh, there's a huge, huge difference. And I've lived here 17 years now. Every boyfriend I had before my husband was Jewish. Most of my friends still are Jewish. And so, you know, in New York, people walk up to you on the street. Hi, I'm Jewish. Don't you wish you were? You know, it's sort of like a badge of honour and courage. And when I came here and started meeting Jewish people, you know, that I could tell by looking at them or whatever, and I'd sort of say a couple of words of Yiddish, and they'd be, what? And it's very defensive. I have found that anti-Semitism is growing through here, and in a very subtle way, in a way that, you know, when it's all white people around and there's no one who they think are Jewish, it absolutely is rising. The snide remarks and all of that, it is growing, and it's very sad.
Rabbi.
I have a general concern that our country is becoming a debating pot for issues which are properly understood elsewhere. Because of the mix of cultures and the way people have moved from one country to another, there are many issues which have become live and serious on the streets of Birmingham, which have actually nothing to do with Birmingham, nothing to do with the United Kingdom. There are many wars being fought on the streets of Birmingham that actually belong in all sorts of other areas. And not to say for 1 minute to the question which we were discussing before, am I my brother's keeper? For sure, we have to have international world concerns. But when I go to fill up petrol in my local petrol station, and somebody who clearly is not of English, what you describe English background, and don't start shooting me down on that, decides to come over to me and spits on me, somebody I've never seen before, never had any discussion with, feels motivated to come up and spit on me, I have an issue. But one other thing...
No, but we haven't got a lot of time, because this is a very, very important issue. Now, Faisal, I want to bring Faisal in here. Okay. And it's kind of on this issue, because, of course, you look at any survey of attitudes, and there are very, Fazan, there are very, very negative attitudes to Jews in the Middle East. Anti-Semitism is rife across the Middle East. Mein Kampf is a popular book across the Middle East. Have we imported some of those, with many Muslim people in this country, have some of those attitudes seeped back into Britain?
I think fundamentally it's an issue of identity. I think since the Second World War and the emergence of the Israeli state, Jewish identity has been connected with the Israeli state, and it's almost inextricably linked together. So whenever anyone criticizes the policies of the Israeli state and the regime there, it's automatically considered to be anti-Semitism. And the reason, can I just finish, please? With all due respect, the judge Richard Goldstein for United Nations, he issued, he researched a report, and he made a statement that both Hamas and the Israeli government were guilty of war crimes. Now, Judge Richard Goldstein is an established Zionist. He's the governor of the Hebrew University, and he was condemned by the vast majority of Israelis as being anti-Semitic, you see.
Right. As somebody, why when I walk up Edward Road in Balsall Heath, which I do frequently, do young children feel it their obligation to racially taunt me?
What was their racial origin?
Doesn't matter.
The point I want to make a different point, because everybody's, you know, when you've got two Jews, you've got at least 4 comments, and that's shown itself here, and that's absolutely fine. I have no issues. That's part of life. That's great. But the point I want to make about anti-Semitism, if children are being taught that Jews are descendants of monkeys and pigs.
By whom?
In schools, in books. It's actually written in textbooks.
Some extremist Muslim schools?
Not just extreme. In many, many schools, these things are being taught. I meet people who have never met a Jew.
Unfortunately, we have come to the end. All the debates continue on our message board. Join us, please, next week from Croydon. I think we'll carry on discussing here in the studio for a few minutes. Goodbye from everyone here in Solihull on the